To the NFC East we go for the first game of the 9:25 window on Sunday evening, where the Commanders travel to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. The Eagles who, as we said a few weeks ago when things were looking a bit rocky for them, had the perfect run-in to end the season and to get everything right before the playoffs, and they've done just what they needed to do to get to that position. The Eagles still in play for the number 2 seed if the Bears lose and they win against the Commanders. Looks like they're going to rest Jalen Hurts this weekend. That may not make a big difference because the Commanders are rolling out Josh Johnson this weekend. They've Marcus Mariota down as well. Josh Johnson hasn't started a game since 2021. This is not the defense against which you'd want to be thrown in. A little bit like Riley Leonard, who we were talking about for the Colts earlier. You'd wonder about Josh Johnson's health going into the offseason against an Eagles front that will be very keen to sharpen their claws before they hit the playoffs. I don't think there's any doubt about who the winner is going to be there. The Eagles only favoured by 4, probably because they're resting Jalen Hurts and may pull a couple of players as they go along. You don't see them running away with this one. I don't think they're going to boat race the Commanders. They also have a couple of players, the Commanders, who are up on their incentive ceiling at the moment. And Bobby Wagner looking for the 300 tackle for loss mark this weekend. I'm missing somebody else. Von Miller is up against a career mark as well, and also an incentive for the season. So the Commanders' defense definitely has a lot to play for here, even though all they're going to be playing for is pride, really, because they have a top 10 draft pick locked in. It's Eagles here for me, Kieran. And who would have thought that we'd be talking about the Commanders looking at potentially a top 5 draft pick, depending on the way other results go, having played for the NFC Championship against the Eagles this time last year.
Yeah, this was scheduled as a Week 18 match for a reason. They thought it was going to be there was going to be a lot more jeopardy involved, and unfortunately didn't play out that way. And exactly as you said, I think it's shaping up to be one of the ugliest and most uneventful games of the season. The Eagles, if they have any sense, they're going to rest more than Jalen Hurts. Was it Saquon Barkley hit 132 yards in Week 16, heating up the right time, and that slowed down to 68 last week, and he got he looked fairly banged up by the end of it. So I don't think he's going to see the field. And realistically, the Eagles could probably afford to rest anyone that's that has any shred of doubt about their fitness, because the defense, as you said, you mentioned sharpening their claws. They've held the opposition under 19 points in the last 3 games. They held James Cook to 74 yards last week. They got five defensive sacks. So it's going to be a low scoring kind of down and dirty kind of gritty game with some I'm predicting horrendous offensive play and very, very little production, but just off and I know the Commanders have had some joy with Jacoby Krosky-Merritt and Debo and Terry McLaurin the last few weeks, but have they lost 8 straight? Have they lost 8? No, sorry, that's the Cardinals. We get to them later on, but they've just been one of the most disappointing teams in the league. And I think the Eagles will just get there because simply they have more to play for, and I think they'll control the narrative as they go, take off who they need to take off, and just play it out.
I'm loving the idea, though, that Eagles fans blow up their own QB controversy if they do have a good performance against the Commanders, because such is the level of chippiness and how quickly they can turn on players in that particular part of the world. Craig, how do you see it?
I have the Eagles as well. I don't think it really matters who Washington trot out there when they've got Josh Johnson at quarterback. It's not going to be a great time. The Eagles defense is really sort of starting to step up. The offense is still a little stop-start. They still can't get Saquon Barkley going, but I wouldn't be risking him in a dead rubber game essentially like this. So yeah, I've got the Eagles.
That 2-3 seed battle again, though, is an interesting one because, and we'll talk about this in a Bears context very shortly, and yeah, maybe we'll save it for them because quick pick game up next, we have Dolphins at Patriots. I don't think there's any way the Dolphins win this one for me. They won't fancy that trip to frigid New England, no matter what incentives are on the line for players in Week 18. It's Patriots all the way for me. Craig?
Oh, 100% agree with that. Yeah, the Dolphins are already partially in Cancun, I think.
Kieran?
The only asterisk I'd have to that is injuries. The Patriots are one of the more banged up teams at the moment, and again, it's that risk reward. They're not going to, they're going to need to be smart with their players, and obviously they've got that, the lingering controversy as well behind everything. Maybe possibly one of those, every week throws up one of those games that we just did not see coming. I think that if that's to happen this week, I think that's a possibility. But having said that, my money would still be on the Patriots.
Right, Lions at Bears up next. The Bears can clinch the number 2 seed if they win, and the Eagles, whom we've just talked about, lose. Chicago would get the 3 seed if they lose, and if they win. Craig, how do you see this one going? There was a scenario in which the Bears could have been going for the 1 seed this weekend, but as are the small margins in the NFL, that's gone. But the 2 might just be the consolation prize they need and the incentive that they want to go up against a Lions team which cleaned their clock earlier on this season, beat them 52-21 back in week 2.
Yes, they did. However, I have the Bears going for this one because I think that the Lions are in a little bit of downgrade mode at the moment and kind of just feeling a little too sorry for themselves for missing out on the playoffs. You look at what happened with Goff last week, 2 interceptions, 3 fumbles in a primetime game as well. And they just did not look like they could get anything going against that Vikings defense. Now, I don't think that Vikings defense is anything special. I think they are good, but I don't think, we're talking about the elite defenses in the league. And I can just see that the Bears doing the exact same thing, putting Goff under duress and making him have a bad day to the point where they might just turn around and say, you know what, we're getting nothing out of this. Let's just pull him and go from there. Caleb Williams is the one for me. I know you've said you won't count it, but he is on course to potentially be the first 4,000-yard quarterback for the Bears. So you've got to cling to something, but I just think he's been fantastic this year. He's really exploded. He's coming off a 330-yard game, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, no sacks as well. I mean, that's something that you could not say last season, and that has been one sort of turning factor, I think, in what's happened with Williams this year is the protection of him. It's 270 yards. That's what he needs for 4,000. The big thing for me will be that rushing attack from the Lions. If the Bears can keep that under control, I think it'll be all right. I know they struggled with Christian McCaffrey, but as we said, Christian McCaffrey is a bit of a different animal, and that 140 yards is just something that he does.
That performance, incidentally, as you mentioned it, so Caleb Williams threw for over 300 yards, 5 touchdowns, 0 sacks, 0 interceptions. Quarterbacks who put up those kind of numbers are 84-4 in the history of the NFL. That's one of the few games that a quarterback has lost in those situations. But to your point, it shows the growth that both Williams and the Bears offense have evidenced since that 52-21 game. And I wouldn't underestimate that as a motivating factor here as the Bears host the Lions. They were really embarrassed in that game. You had the Lions celebrating in the end zone, trolling Ben Johnson, mimicking the stumble bum play, the famous stumble bum play when the player Jared Goff pretends to fall over and they ended up foxing the defense for a touchdown. They were tweaking Johnson by doing that. How those paths have diverged since then, though, as the Bears have gone up on the up and up since. The Lions, to your point, Craig, kind of look like they're past their peak. And I think the Lions are one of those teams that have a lot to think about in the offseason. Much has been made of Dan Campbell's comments after they lost the NFC Championship game against the 49ers, where he was saying, I hope it's not the case, and I don't think it is the case, but I know how hard it is to get here, and maybe this was our shot. You're looking back now going, how prophetic might those words have been? Because at that time, the Bears were nowhere, the Vikings were nowhere, the Packers were their only competition in the NFC North. Now, it's back to being a murderer's row, a resurgent Bears team, Packers team that, all right, have not maybe done what we would have hoped they would have done or foreseen that they would have done at the start of the season. They're not going anywhere anytime soon. And the Vikings, we'll see how they develop JJ McCarthy next season, but there's no path to 15-2 the way the Lions had it last season. And I think the Bears will look at this as a bit of a changing of the guard moment. I think they look at it as a revenge moment. And there was a little bit of murmuring about, and myself and Brian talked about this off air earlier on in the week. Might the Bears be in that zone where they consider a bit of playoff tanking here? Like, might they rather not have to face the familiar foe in the Packers and slide into the number 3 seed where they'd face probably the Rams and have the Rams travel to Soldier Field? I think that's too clever. I also think if you have genuine designs on winning the Super Bowl, the number 2 seed is a significant prize to get. That means that if you win on wildcard weekend, you also play at home in the divisional round. You don't have to go on the road until, if you win in your divisional round game, you play the championship game. I think that's where Ben Johnson's mentality will be. I think while the Lions will be motivated and they won't want to be rolled over, even though they have nothing in theory to play for, it's a divisional game. There's a lot of pride here. This is a big rivalry and a much closer one than, say, Bears-Packers has been over the years. The Lions have had the upper hand lately. The Bears will want to set the record straight on that one. I think when it comes down to what's going to happen in the field, I think that Bears defense has a big point to prove after they were dog-walked by the 49ers last weekend. They said in their post-game press conference interviews, led by Jalen Johnson, yeah, we let our offense down. That's a game we should have won. They'll have a point to prove. They'll be all after Jared Goff. They'll be looking to jump on any potential turnover-worthy throws by him. I think the Bears' run game will get to work on that banged-up Lions defensive front as well, as they've done on better defenses down the stretch, let's face it, and I think that will be enough for Chicago to win. Kieran?
Yeah, the Bears are just a flat-out better team at the moment. The Lions won't want to give them anything easy. They won't want to finish with a stutter, or, as we said, limp to the finish line. And we saw, again, I mentioned that how they upset the Packers' chances at going to the playoffs with nothing to play for 2 seasons ago. So they have a lot of pride, but the incentive is too big for the Bears for the reasons you said. And at the moment, I know I get I get what your point about a divisional matchup, but this is a really struggling Packers team at the moment. I'd rather them any day than a traveling Rams team. And just to make a point as well, there's Dolphins fans everywhere, absolutely in uproar because you pissed all over their 1972 perfect season, because that was only 14 regular season games. So they're not going to be happy with you. But no, the Bears take this one.
If it ain't 16, the record gets swept clean, as I always say. Right, quick pick game next. This is a game that we probably would have spent a little bit more time talking about if Jim Harbaugh hadn't decided he was going to rest his starters, because the Chargers are already locked into the playoffs, so only seeding really matters here. But this, unfortunately, gives the Broncos a nailed-on chance of winning this game and setting up the number 1 seed. I think that's what they're going to do. Kieran?
Yeah, no team needs to protect themselves more than the Chargers physically at the moment. So it's the right decision, and it just makes this an uneventful game, Broncos.
Great, I'm not criticizing Jim Harbaugh for making that decision. To your point, it's the right decision. It just robs us of what otherwise might have been a really entertaining game. Craig?
I've got the Broncos having this, and I agree. Jim's done the right thing there. Justin Herbert has the ability to beat any team on his day, and he's hurting at the moment. And the last thing you want with their offensive line is to bang him up even more.
Cardinals Rams, Kieran. I was talking about this one a little bit earlier, saying that the Rams can clinch the number 5 seed if they win and if the Seahawks win. They'd be in the number 6 seed if they win and if they lose and the 49ers win. That's not nothing, because as we said earlier, that's the difference between going to play the winner of the NFC South and going to play the Eagles effectively. So I think you know which one the Rams would rather be in if they have control of their destiny. Sean McVay saying he's going to play his starters. They've lost 2 games in a row. He wants to see them get it right. It's not always the case that you're going to get it right against a division rival, even one that's struggling in the way the Cardinals have been. Do you think the Rams will do that?
Yeah, well, they should do it. I mean, they need to do it. I jumped the gun while ago. The Cardinals are on an 8-game losing streak at the moment, and they're a team. You talk about Cancun, they're there. They've been there a long time. They've been an absolute shambles this season, barring Trey McBride, who's been phenomenal, and Jacoby Brissett, who's acquitted himself quite well. You'd have to admit, and you want to be as statistically based on it from an analytics point of view or from a predictions point of view as much or as often as you can. I'm sure Craig will definitely attest to that. But there, and it's rarely that I would admit that a team needs to play simply to keep, to get their vibe back or for vibes. I know it's a bit of a buzzword, but the Rams need something to get themselves back to where they were and to feel themselves again, because the Rams have gone from the undisputed top team, in terms of favorites to win the NFC at least, to a team that, as you said, they're facing a three-game losing streak. The one statistic or the one piece of data that just jumps out at you is their drop in red zone production since they've lost Devontae Adams. It has dipped massively, and this, we talked about that last week, and they struggled again last week against the Falcons. They just could not get it done when they got up the field. The good thing that they have going for them is that they're playing a Cardinals team who gave up 5 straight red zone touchdowns last week. So, I mean, it's a team that can give you a chance to get back in your groove. But it is, it is a question of how fit Devontae Adams is going to be going into the playoffs, because I think they're going to need him to make a run, even as phenomenal as Puka Nacua is, and as as excellent as Kieran Williams is, who again had a really good game. He was close to 100 yards last week. I mean, they've got one of the most complete teams in the league, but that has been a huge weapon, is that absolute pure efficiency in the red zone. And they need to get that back. They just simply have to get that back to go on a run. I mean, Matthew Stafford, he's too much of a seasoned veteran to let the couple of games, atrocious games really get to him. I mean, he's, three interceptions again last week and a game like it several weeks ago. And if that was Sam Darnold, we'd be absolutely killing him for it. I think we're giving him, a little bit more credit because he is Matthew Stafford. You do fancy him to just get back into the groove at the right time. But no, it's just that one thing that they have to tweak. They have to get that back. They have to get into their groove. And for the vibe, I think, the Rams need the win this weekend, and I think they get it, and they should get it comfortably as well.
Craig, the Rams at various points this season have annoyed the heck out of me because they've looked the most complete team in the NFL at times, and they've looked like a team with no weaknesses, and yet they found weird ways to lose games. And I could explain away virtually every defeat they'd had until that Falcons game when, all right, at least they come roaring back and they hope at the end. But they just inexplicably go to sleep at times. Now, Rams fans will tell you that they went to sleep during their Super Bowl season as well, didn't win a game in November, of course, and then came absolutely roaring back and hit a heater going into the playoffs. McVay will be very conscious of just what type of momentum is needed going into wildcard weekend. Typically, teams that come in on the back of 3 or 4 defeats exit just as quickly. And we'll talk about the Steelers and how they did just that last year in a few moments' time. So this is an important game for the Rams. It's not just about playoff seedings. It is really about them being in the right form and in the right shape of mind, and to Kieran's point, having the right vibes before the playoffs start.
Yeah, and I think that was the one thing that Sean McVay was very adamant about, is that this team cannot go into the playoffs off the back of a loss, and a loss like they had against the Falcons. They need this get-right game, and there are a handful of teams in the NFL that you can get a nice little get-right game against, and the Cardinals are one of them. And it just so happens that they're going to have them this weekend, and it could be a bloodbath if they really want it to be. Now, this was something I was going to say earlier with the Bears, but I think that the Bears should sit Rome Odunze for the playoffs in the same way that I think the Rams should sit Devontae Adams for the playoffs, and just let them get another week worth of healthiness. I don't think putting them out on the field this week is going to give them really anything. They've played enough games. They haven't missed that much time. They'll get back into the groove quite quickly, and especially someone like Devontae Adams, who, when we saw him in London, Kieran, was just electric and just a game changer. And I do think that they have missed him more than they missed Puka Nacua when Nacua went down and Devontae Adams was still in. I don't know why, but Stafford just seems to have an innate connection with Devontae, despite the fact that it's 1 year. They've only been together this year. I do agree with what Kieran was saying as well, that about Jacoby Brissett has been okay. I think Trey McBride has been absolutely phenomenal. I mean, if you're going to break the tight end receptions record, then that's the way to do it. And he did it in 16 games. However, Michael Wilson needs 93 yards for 1K. I don't think that can be overlooked. You've got Marvin Harris Jr., who's going to be the big name and the big wide receiver one, but for Wilson to be able to do that has been impressive. But I just feel like this Rams defense can quite easily shut those 3 down and then just sleepwalk their way into a victory here.
Yeah, I agree with that. I got Rams here as well. Jets at Bills doesn't have 0 writing on it because it does dictate the Bills seeding depending on results elsewhere. They can go in as the 5 or the 6 seed, but we're going to quick pick this game nonetheless. It's Bills at home for me, where the fans are being called in to shovel the snow away from the stadium. Nothing says it's playoff time or on the verge of playoff time like the Bills having to pay fans $20 an hour to clear the snow out of the stadium. Kieran?
Just to clarify, Conor, if the Jets even if the Jets get 10 interceptions this weekend, it doesn't count. They're still the first 0-16 interception team.
Now you're getting with the program.
Cutting it off. No, the Bills hopefully, again, I'm not hopefully because I'm a Bills fan, but from a Bills perspective, they manage this game again. Just don't do anything silly and get themselves fit and healthy going to the playoffs.
Craig?
The Bills will be beating themselves up over the Eagles game, no doubt about it, because they had the chance to do it. Like the Rams, this is another one of those get-right games and get yourself a little bit of momentum going into the playoffs. So Bills for me.
Oh, the Chiefs at Raiders, another quick pick game. How the mighty have fallen. We would have been looking at this in the schedules. I'm sure we're looking at this as potentially deciding the AFC West and indeed maybe the number one overall seed in the AFC. Chiefs are gone a couple of weeks back. The Raiders looked like they were gone from about week 3. I've got Chiefs on the road to at least finish their season with a victory. Craig, how about you?
I also have the Chiefs. After watching the Giants-Raiders last week, the Raiders are one of the worst teams I've seen for a while. And even with a third-string quarterback, the Chiefs, should win this.
Yeah, they are desperate. They're a terrible watch as well. Kieran, for you?
Yeah, they might be resting their starters, but the same coaches on the sidelines, the Chiefs.
We've no Monday night game this week. The Sunday night football game at 1:20 our time is a doozy, though, as the Ravens go to Acrisure to play the Steelers. It's a good old-fashioned win and in game, and the Steelers obviously have been up and down the last couple of weeks, albeit that they beat the Ravens in their last tilt out. Steelers at one stage had the AFC North by the short and curlies, but they very much let that grip go. The Ravens, lest we forget, started the season 1-5 and have come roaring back, more or less, with a couple of hiccups along the way, not least of which, of course, was when they were upended by the Bengals. A lot of questions about Lamar Jackson's A, fitness, and B, willingness to participate in this game. Calling to mind the contract year when Lamar sat out the last 3 weeks of the season with the PCL injury that the Ravens said wasn't worth shutting him down over, which Lamar shut himself down over and didn't, of course, famously play in a wild card game. Those kind of issues have resurfaced, and the vibes, to use your word again, Kieran, in the Baltimore area have not been great this past week. And you wonder, one of the most interesting storylines, I think, here for both of these teams in the sliding doors moment, if you lose, Mike Tomlin's potentially on the hot seat in Pittsburgh, John Harbaugh potentially on the hot seat in Baltimore. Either of these two teams could be looking for a new coach. All right, there's been smoke without fire in the Lamar Jackson case in the past, and there were times when we thought he was on his way out the door, even when he put in a trade request, and it hasn't happened. But the stakes here go beyond what happens in the playoffs and with the destiny of the AFC North. This could be division and potentially conference altering, depending on which way it goes. And there'll be a teardown in Pittsburgh if they don't make the playoffs, and there will be serious repercussions in Baltimore if they don't make the playoffs. All of that said, I think the Ravens are the smart pick for this one. However, and maybe this is the big mistake that I've been making when I was picking the Chiefs earlier on this season, sure that they would get it right and sure that they'd eventually get there. All we've seen the Ravens do, and admittedly it normally happens at the playoffs rather than the regular season, is cough it up in these big games when the stakes are really high. Season in, season out, the Ravens don't get it done. The Steelers, on the other hand, and admittedly only in the regular season and not in the playoffs, do tend to get it done. And they get there, they find a way by hook or by crook to get to the dance. What they do there, we shall see, but I think the Steelers will find a way to pull this one out against a familiar foe. And they're not the favourites to do so. They are 3.5 point underdogs, which makes the Ravens 3.5 point favourites, Kieran.
Yeah, huge stakes for both head coaches. And you could look at both seasons in a number of different ways. From a Steelers point of view, I have to say I've been bitten by the bug, I have to admit, this year, the Steelers bug, partially because I've been an Aaron Rodgers fan from a football point of view, at least for a long time, but largely because of the Dublin experience and what we got to see for ourselves in terms of being sucked in by the Steelers crowd. I was so lucky to host Bryant McFadden, such a wonderful guest, met Jerome Bettis, met the Rui family, and so I really got sucked in by the Steelers buzz this year and found myself kind of very, very quietly, rooting for them to get to the playoffs and to go a little bit deeper than they have. And in the last couple of weeks, when it looked like they had turned their season around.
I'm smiling, and obviously I would say this from a professional point of view because I have a professional relationship with the Steelers and the day job, but they are such a classy organization. Like, they really are a blue chip franchise. Like, they do the whole history and the alumni and the whole fan experience a lot better than most other teams, would make most other teams jealous. It's very easy to get swept away in it.
Yeah, and I didn't even mention getting to meet Rocky Blyer, an absolute legend of the game as well, early on the season, who we hosted on the show. So I've been a real, I've had the Steelers as maybe my number 2 team to go along with this season. But the last couple of weeks they've really shot themselves in the foot when they seem to have done all the hard work to coast into the playoffs. They've really, really let the Ravens back in, and I talked about, I predicted the Packers to beat the Ravens because of the reason you just mentioned about the Ravens shooting themselves in the foot so often. But for once, the Ravens did exactly what they should have been doing a lot longer, for a lot longer, by just giving Derrick Henry the ball. He carried the ball 36 times down the throat of the Packers, ran for 216 yards and 4 touchdowns, and just a couple of weeks ago, the Steelers played the Ravens. Rodgers threw for 284 yards. He had 330-plus throws and catches, but one of them was a 52-yard pass to DK Metcalf. And, throwing the ball deep with or without DK Metcalf is just, it's night and day. And I haven't been on the show to discuss what DK did a couple of weeks ago, but that will possibly go down as one of the stupidest and most costly moments in Steelers history, because if they don't make the playoffs, I would almost attribute it solely to that on the back of the last couple of weeks. Because
I don't know if you've seen any of the little publicity tour that the Lions fan who was on the receiving end of that DK Metcalf slap has done, but I do, and DK was stupid to do it, and I'm not defending it, but I hate the idea that this jerk in the blue wig, this mouthy Detroit fan, will end up determining potentially which of these two teams goes to the playoffs. It's terrible that it comes down to something as stupid as that. But that's all on DK to maintain his sang-froid in that circumstance.
I have no doubt in the world that guy got what he deserved, and it sickens me that he's going to benefit from it over the next, financially and from a notoriety point of view. It's just a ridiculous moment, and like teams like the Steelers, as you mentioned, classy organizations like the Steelers shouldn't have their seasons go down in flames because of moments like this. But even as I say it, when you look at the run of crazy wide receivers that Mike Tomlin has had to deal with over the years, he deserves a knighthood. But I do think, for that reason, I think that the Ravens will do the same thing again. I think they're going to ride with Derrick Henry this weekend, and I think they're going to get over the line. And for all the reasons I mentioned, I think it's a crying shame. Having said all that, when you get the Ravens now getting sneaky hot coming into the last 2 weeks of the season, going into the playoffs, if you stand back and you're totally honest with yourself and say, at their best, who can actually make a push and go deep in these playoffs, who's more equipped to do so, it is the Ravens. And if they get in, and if Lamar Jackson, turns up, and if he's as good as he can be, and Derrick Henry's as good as he can be, and they get things right, you just don't know how dangerous they could be, and it could make for an incredible season from a Ravens point of view, if all goes right. But yeah, unfortunate from the Steelers point of view if they don't, if they don't make it happen. I get your point. The Steelers tend to find a way to get over the line in these situations, but I give it to the Ravens slightly this week.
Craig, appropriately given your cameo role tonight, the last pick falls to you. Who's it?
It is the Ravens for me. I do think that they just ride the Derrick Henry kind of train a little bit, and that's what gets them over the line. That DK Metcalf being out is just massive. It's probably too much because Aaron Rodgers doesn't have an amazing cast outside of that. So yeah, Ravens for me.
All right, that is us for our Week 18 preview show. We have a very special live experience on Sunday. We're going to be broadcasting from a studio. More details of that to come. We'll have a Red Zone watch-along on Sunday to come with all our usual content, instant reaction, and all the rest of it. So stay tuned to that. Stay tuned to our social channels, and we'll update you on all the details for Sunday. In the meantime, Craig, thanks for jumping across from the AV Club to join us tonight. Check out Craig on the New York Giants Big Blue podcast as well while you're at it. Kieran, pleasure as always. We'll be back very soon on the Irish NFL Show.